Pokemon Detective Pikachu is directed by Rob Letterman, who's directed movies like Monsters vs. Aliens, the Goosebumps movie that came out in 2015, and yes, Shark Tale.
Dun, 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 can't touch this. Uh-oh, 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 stop. Oscar time.
And it stars Ryan Reynolds and Justice Smith. Now, Marquez had something to do tonight, and Brittany was feeling kind of sick, so I went to go see this movie, which I actually went to see this movie with Brittany, but then she didn't feel like doing this video, so I'm having to do this video by myself, so hopefully it doesn't go too bad. Now, this movie, I was actually pretty excited for it. After the first trailer came out, it looked freaking hilarious. I love Ryan Reynolds. He seemed like he was going to make this movie even more entertaining than a Pokemon movie could be. And I've always been a huge Pokemon fan ever since I was little. I even still have a huge book of Pokemon cards back at my parents' house. And I even went around dressed as in like a Charizard costume, like everywhere I went when I was like 3 or 4 years old. So I was pretty excited for this movie. So with that being said, I am excited to say that this movie turned out to be pretty good. There is a lot to actually love about this movie. There are a lot of things that you could say bad about it, which I am going to talk about in a little bit, but I want to talk about a lot of the good things first. And the number one thing I can say about this movie is that Ryan Reynolds blew it out of the ballpark, because his comedic timing and everything that he did in this movie was just so perfect. There's even times that I legit was laughing out loud, not even just like giggling, or those little things where you just blow air out of your nose real quick. No, they were really genuine laughs. And it was kind of disappointing because my theater, or me and Brittany's theater that we're in, barely anybody was laughing throughout the movie, which I don't really know why, because the movie is freaking hilarious, especially Ryan Reynolds. Any scene that he's in is just so entertaining to watch. The Pokemon, the designs of the actual Pokemon were fantastic. They actually looked like what Pokemon would look like in real life. The CGI on them was really great too, so I commend the visual effects department on that. One thing I wasn't really expecting was it did have a lot of pretty good emotional weight to it. There's some emotional scenes, particularly in the beginning. The first like 10-15 minutes were actually pretty sad, and actually made me feel a little bit for the main character, which that's another thing, is that the main character, the main human character, played by Justice Smith, I haven't seen him on much of anything else other than Jurassic World: The Fallen Kingdom, which he was just used to be the character that screams all the time. So I didn't really have that high of hopes for him in this, although I was hoping that he would bring more to the table, and he actually really does. He does really fantastic, and I am also pretty surprised by how family friendly they kept this movie. There were maybe like one or two jokes that maybe was a slight innuendo, but it wasn't even like in your face kind of innuendos. It was just very subtle, but those were just like one or two times. The rest of it was pretty family friendly, and was still freaking hilarious. That's the thing that I was scared about, because Ryan Reynolds, of course, obviously he's Deadpool, and there's a lot of Deadpoolish type of humor, if I can call it that. But at the same time, it's still pretty clean. And also, a lot of the action scenes were really entertaining as well. There's a lot that is super entertaining. There's comedy, there's action. There's so many things that keep you just entertained. There isn't really any boring parts. Now, I do have a fair share of issues. I'm gonna say them, and they're gonna sound like a lot, but I still recommend that you go see it. But I do want to bring up these issues I have. And the first one is that a lot of the human characters, besides the main character I feel like was written pretty decently for the most part. But other than that, all the other for the most part, all the other human characters just felt so cartoony and cheesy, and just not written very well. And especially Catherine Newton's character, her acting as well as the writing for her character just felt so cartoony, and it wasn't even like in a good way. And I don't know why they had her act like that, because I've seen her in other things, so I know she's a pretty competent actress. But they had her act in such a cheesy way that just took you out of the movie. Pretty much every scene she was in, especially the first scene. The first scene she was in was probably the worst. And then I know I just kind of praised the main character because I felt like he was the best written character, human character in the movie. But I do feel like he does have an arc in this movie, and I feel like his arc completed like really quickly. His arc finishes pretty much before the second act even ends, it feels like. And I feel like they could have just pushed that towards the end of the movie. And the movie is called Detective Pikachu, so of course there's going to be a detective aspect to the movie. There's a mystery. The whole movie is a mystery. And I will say, I didn't go into this movie expecting like this some like Shakespeare level writing and some like Sherlock Holmes type story with the mystery part of it. But I do still want to say that the detective aspect of it wasn't the greatest. They would go to point A to point B, then somebody would give them a little bit of exposition, then they would go to the next place, then another character would give them a little bit more exposition of what's going on, then they would go to the next place and over again. And so it just did feel pretty formulaic. Again, I wasn't expecting like the greatest writing in this movie, but I do still want to bring that up. And I also will say the enjoyment in this movie was just throughout the entire movie. But I will say the quality, I feel like, just kind of, it was good at the beginning, and then it kind of decreased as the movie went on. And not, it didn't like drop super far down, but it did, the writing did drop down as the movie went on. And then I will say the enjoyment actually does go up as the movie goes on. So it's kind of a trade-off. The quality kind of goes down, but the enjoyment goes up as the movie goes on. And I kind of blame that just on the characters getting cheesier and cheesier as the movie goes on. And also the editing, I feel like towards the end kind of gets a little choppy with certain scenes just ending, and then the characters being in another place, and it just felt a little bit choppy towards the end. And the last thing I want to say is that, and this isn't really that big of a negative, and I'm not going to say what it is because it happens at the end of the movie, but something happens at the end of the movie, and it's a pretty big thing that happens. And it kind of reminded me of the Infinity Gauntlet comic that I actually read pretty recently, so it's kind of fresh in my mind. And it's one gripe I had in the Infinity Gauntlet comic too, and it's how, which if you haven't read it, don't listen to what I'm about to say because it's kind of a spoiler, but whenever Nebula gets the Infinity Gauntlet, I don't really like how she gets it. And it's kind of hard to explain without spoiling what happens in Detective Pikachu, but just how she obtains it. There's a scene in Detective Pikachu at the end that's pretty similar, and it's just something that just I didn't really like how it happened. It felt kind of cheap. So overall, if you are a Pokemon fan, I do highly recommend this. They do have a lot of fun with the different Pokemon, and I loved how they integrated all the Pokemon into this life, and I love how the movie takes place in a world where like Pokemon and humans they live and interact with each other, and they kind of coexist in this world. And I do really I do kind of hope that they make more live action Pokemon movies now, especially with how they had everything look. It just looked amazing. The visual effects, everything was just perfect in that department. Just it did have quite a bit of issues, and it's not like I don't really expect many people to go into this movie expecting like this some great writing, but at the same time I do want to say it does bring the movie down a little bit quality wise, but it's still an entertaining movie, and I do highly recommend it. I'm gonna say that Pokemon Detective Pikachu is 71% awesome. Anyways, guys, don't forget to like, share, and comment below. Tell us what you thought of Detective Pikachu if you've seen it already, or tell us what your favorite Pokemon movie is. And don't forget to follow us on social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at 2awesomemen. Anyways, thank you for watching, and you will see us later.